question. Our position is really simple, as it should be. Medicinal cannabis drivers and their medicinal cannabis should be treated as any other prescribed medication. Yeah, it's really simple. Basically, just about everyone agreed, and no one was keen to support it. So that's the story of our life at one level. What happened ultimately is because clearly we weren't going away, and because we do have a sort of a balance of power type situation in the upper house. It's 1/3 Labor, 1/3 opposition, and 1/3 crossbench. And the crossbench is about half progressive, half reactionary. We're in the half progressive, so the government needs us and the Greens to get anything basically through the Parliament if the opposition doesn't support it. So what they came up with in the middle of the year was what they're calling the on-track driving trial for medicinal cannabis, which basically means they're going to get Medcan users, going to put them in a vehicle, wire them up, get them to drive around the racetrack a few times and take their medicine, as good doses, and then assess the results. We have very mixed views on this because on the one hand, it might be useful, and there is some other research happening as part of it. On the other hand, there was a decided feeling, given that this is sort of an 18-month process, that they're also just kicking the can, well, not so much down the road, but into the next postcode. So we'll see how that goes. Needless to say, we do reserve our right to get angry. So if we are getting screwed around with this thing, we will retaliate. I think that's the general view. So that's the first thing that we've been working on. That trial starts in about 4 weeks. There's a budget allocation that's been made. The tender has been appointed from one of the unis to run it. So yeah, we'll see how we go. And I'll hand over to Rach to talk about the next item.
Personal use or hemp? Should we go to hemp? Yeah. So I might move to personal use because hemp we'll talk about as our most recent bill, a bit of a progression there. But at the end of last year, we introduced a bill to regulate personal adult use of cannabis. We position that to be basically cannabis is regulated for you to allow to grow 6 plants at home that you would be able to grow and then gift or at least be able to carry 50 grams on you for personal use. Essentially, it's looking at the ACT and how we could improve on that. So that was that in the ACT, you cannot have seeds. However, how do you grow a plant without seeds? It's a bit of an abnormality in the legislation. We felt 6 plants was more reflective of what community needs and wants. And we also covered that you could grow 6 plants indoor or outdoor. So at any time, you could have your 6 plants growing and be able to store that, your product at home as well. We also wanted to make sure that it was covered for gifting, because gifting is not something that's covered in the ACT. And we know if anyone grows weed, you know that you're gifting it to people. That's what you do. So we wanted to make sure that was covered. Interestingly, the debate went really well. So we actually had quite a bit of support from all different sides of politics. And the conversation was around, well, we don't support private members' bills, but we do see that we need a harm minimisation approach here. So it's not a hard no, but it wasn't a yes either. And the Premier actually made some really interesting comments, which was that the door is open for further discussion on this. Again, it's not a no. But what happened halfway through last year was Premier Daniel Andrews resigned and left, and then Jacinta Allen stepped into becoming the Premier. So we felt as though we sort of had to renegotiate that relationship and that working agreement, and we're still sort of going through that process. However, she has been very forthcoming and I guess open to further discussions with us on cannabis law reform more broadly. And what was really interesting about that was during the personal use debate, the media wanted to talk to all the other members of parliament about cannabis use, and so many of them came out as cannabis users at one point or another, including the Premier. And my argument is 5 years ago, if a new Premier said that, there would have been a call for them to resign. So we're really seeing a change in rhetoric, and I think we're seeing some movement there. In saying that, we're still waiting to get progress on that, and we want to see what we can do further with that. But we felt as though we're in a good position to keep pushing with that campaign. We've done further petitions around cannabis should no longer be criminalised, so you'll see a debate coming up we're trying to insert ourselves into Parliament and have that ongoing conversation as much as we can, while we garner support from all the other members of Parliament as well. We do know that with the Labor government, there is a lot of support amongst their caucus. They just don't really see it as a priority, is what we're being told. So our job is to make sure that people understand, well, it is a priority. It's a big priority of the community because people are still getting arrested, people are still being criminalised. And that's where we sort of need really that community support to keep pushing that agenda forward.
Yeah. So there's, yeah.
We didn't define it in your house because we don't want cops walking into your house with a pair of scales.
So there's if you look at a lot of the legislation, it's got, you can have this many grams in your home, and you can have this many on your person when you're not in your home. You know, if you've got half a dozen plants, and there's a cap of 50 grams, you know, at home, well, if you're within the law, you should probably find a different hobby to gardening, you know. So we've left that mute. So whatever you grow is what you grow, and you can, as Rach said, one of the other big things compared to Canberra is you can grow indoors or you can go in a greenhouse in your garden. Whereas in Canberra, both of those are offences, which means effectively you've only got one crop a year. So we're trying to get that. And then the 50 grams is actually the existing definition of a small quantity of cannabis in the Victorian Drugs and Poisons Act. So we thought, well, hey, don't want to disturb that. That looks a pretty good number. So, yeah. That answer your question?
Well, it does, but there are a lot more questions.
Okay. Should we do questions at the end, if that's all right? We'll just run through the other two. Yeah.
The third thing, we've got 4 things we just wanted to raise with you. The third thing we wanted to raise is an inquiry we've got coming up. So we got a motion through the House to set up an inquiry into workplace drug testing, and particularly cannabis testing. There are a huge number of stories of people out of our community who, when they've spoken to their boss and said, I'm on Medcan, suddenly find that they're being performance managed out of the job. Their career is basically dead as a dodo. And these are very often people who are not in frontline jobs where, even if they were impaired, it would be an issue. It's, from our point of view, a good thing as well, because we're getting some good expertise and some good witnesses in to talk about it, but there's a crossover between workplace drug testing and Medcan driving. And it's this hoary old issue about impairment versus presence. And I'm sure this looks like a pretty educated audience, but you all know, right, that it stays in your system for up to 30 days. And so, again, what we want to try and do is get some standards set or some methodology set that will pick out and tease out this question of presence as opposed to impairment. So this will be 2 days of hearings, there'll be a couple of reports. But again, just trying to nail down some thoughts on how do we get beyond the current impasse, because it's quite clear that if we take Medcan driving, no road safety minister wants to give a pass to Medcan driving and then have a road accident. That's what they shit themselves about. You know, that's what they stay awake at night. It's risk politically.
Does that feel the same about alcohol?
No, that's right. And they don't even test for opiates. You know, like if you look at the table of harms, we're talking about, 10 nanograms of cannabis for an average user is about the same as 2 antihistamines you buy over the counter in a chemist.
A woman just got 6 years on the Sunshine Coast for taking out 2 beautiful young mechanics working in a car. Highest card on legal painkillers.
Yeah.
6.
Medicinal heroin. yeah. So I guess that's sort of what we're trying to get at, and it's very, very difficult. It's really is like wrestling with a column of smoke. But that's what we've got, the closed track driving trial, and we've got that, and hopefully we can vector in and try and come up with some solutions.
Can I just take that drug side testing? I'm a former police officer. Don't worry, you muted me when I was on that issue. Anyway, I know for a fact that we used to fake RBT breath tests because police are given numbers in Queensland.
Yeah.
Queensland Transport to breath tests, not police. So if we had to get certain numbers, the working the live industry, which is understaffed, we just pretend. My question is, Your Honour, if you're doing roadside testing for numbers, statistics, it's bullshit. Because they can do it themselves in the car. Right?
Yeah. So the question was about bogus.
New South Wales have quotas.
Yeah, I don't think we've got quotas in Victoria, but we did get one document that was quite interesting, which suggested that on the fast swipe, so the standard issue swabs, it's got about a 20% false positive and a 20% false negative, which is why they now have to drop back to that. And I think where our thinking's going, and this is by no means locked in, is that what you actually need is you'd have a swab test, then you'd have something like Druid, which is an impairment testing program. And then the other question, and this is going to be like what we can get agreement with government on, but I suspect the other one's going to be zero blood alcohol. I think that's what the government's going to want if we want to get a deal. But that's looking well down the track.
So is that like in your system, like you're going to have zero alcohol as well?
Yeah, that's right. So you have zero blood alcohol and you've got to fail both tests. Although if you fail the impairment test, I mean, probably you're going to get picked up for impairment. If you get picked up for impairment, you shouldn't be on the fucking road. Yeah?
Yeah.
But if you're just because you test positive on a swab, then something like Druid or some of the other technologies that are emerging will actually test for impairment. And so you've got to get both of those if you're the cops, if you want to move on to the next stage.
No, they also use that as a primary thing, like the kind of style system specifically looking for impairment rather than any substitutes. So like
No, because there's no offence for, well, there is an offence for impairment, but that would, you know, I can't imagine how that would be. You get pulled over not demonstrating impairment, and then they test you for impairment and you get booked. I don't know if that's possible. If they pull you over and you're weaving and whatever else, okay, it's going to go from there. But you know, who knows with the cops?
Yeah, but the other thing too is it's been proven that if you haven't slept for 18 hours, you're blood alcohol.
Yeah. And that's right. And in the context of workplace, testing, we're trying to actually get a broad definition. We also want to explore in that whether or not we can actually say that with medicinal cannabis, you're taking that for a medical condition, and that should fall under the disability provisions of the Equal Opportunity Act, and therefore any legislation that discriminates against you for your disability is ipso facto unconstitutional. So we'll be running that line and testing that out. So,
Clever boy.
I guess no. I just regurgitated on behalf of others. And then, well, we'll take questions in a minute, but we'll just,
sorry,
the fourth one is just, no, it's all good. We'll just talk about hemp briefly.
So as David mentioned, we're obviously going through a process of an inquiry with workplace drug testing. But last year we had an inquiry looking at industrial hemp, and the Victorian government had already set up a task force looking at industrial hemp before COVID, and it just fell away during COVID. Nothing sort of progressed that. So we thought the best way to sort of work with this government is to go, well, we'll carry on your good work and take it through to the inquiry stages. All of that evidence is then accumulated and reported on. And what we've done with that evidence, which said it recommended hemp needs its own standalone legislation in Victoria, because currently it's still captured under Drugs, Poisons and Controlled Substances Act. So even though it's 1% THC or below, it needs its own standalone legislation. So last week, was it this week? Yeah, it was true. This week we introduced a bill for an industrial hemp industry bill for industrial hemp to have its own standalone legislation. What we're seeing and what we're hearing from farmers is a lot of farmers want to grow hemp, want to plant hemp, even if to use for a rotational crop. But the process to do that is you have to apply for a license, you have to prove that you're a fit and proper person, police checks. They don't just check your police records, but your second cousin, just to make sure that you're not in any way involved in organised crime, to be able to plant a crop that would do no harm even if you smoked an acre of that. So it's pretty ridiculous that we're at this point. But what we're seeing is a real emergence of, obviously the building industry is really captured by hemp. We know that it captures carbon, and that's sort of very appetising for a lot of businesses as well as farmers. It's a really good rotational crop, but it's also it's a solid crop by way of it can make a lot of money for people. So we see in Victoria, you're not allowed to use the whole of plant, so that's another thing we've included. Why would you just pick the seed and then throw the rest out, or use the stalk and throw the seeds out? Doesn't make any sense. So what we've tried to do is just look at what's practical here and what will work, and we're getting a really good response from government. So thankfully there's already a real swell around re-emerging industry of hemp, the re-emerging industry, and there's been a lot of positive media. So even if a member of parliament doesn't support cannabis, they're more open to supporting hemp, and for us it's about breaking down that stigma more broadly.
Right.
Is it a money thing for the government as well? Is that why they're showing a bit more interest?
Jeff's just asked if it's a money thing for the government about hemp. I think so, definitely. And I think they're really they keep talking about we've got to reduce red tape. So this is going to be, we'll see their budget come out next week, the week after, and next week. And I think a big part of that will be we need to reduce red tape. We need to get out of the way and let industry flourish. And hemp lands perfectly amongst all of that. So, yeah.
That's the target for Logan District that I'm representing with the party.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of youth that have got because I don't really care about them.
Yeah.
I'm not like a social worker.
Yeah.
I just said I was a copper.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's not their fault that they're so fucked up. Because I knew their parents. I didn't ever hope for the men. But they're all adults now.
Yeah.
Right? I'm really sure that, because I'm not necessarily promoting the league. I've already got that vote.
Yeah.
I'm talking Logan, where you've got a lot of small business owners.
Totally.
And jet skis, and he shaves his legs, like they're all the referendum no voters. 30-somethings. I've nearly died. So they're the ones that have to be convinced. For the industry, I'm not doing nothing pot smoking. We all know about that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and get to chambers of commerce with all those statistics with building.
Yeah, really good idea to talk to the Farmers Federation, and this is someone that we've found good connection with. So the Farmers Federation, generally quite conservative politically, but they also see opportunity, and hemp is that bridging gap between, we should be treating hemp as just another crop. And it reduces that stigma. Why would it be considered a drug? Realistically, there's so much opportunity for the future with hemp. So I agree. If you're trying to look at ways to bridge that gap with community, and you don't want to talk more broadly about cannabis, hemp is definitely a pathway.
I reckon that's the way.
But approach the Farmers Federation. They're really good. Yeah, happy to talk.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was a bit, I must say, speaking candidly, it was a bit weird in terms of where we're at politically and socially, but there was just like love with the Farmers Federation and with the National Party. But, like you've...
They want in.
Yeah, and that's part of politics, when you get in, you got to find your friends where you can, because at the end of the day, it's how many hands go up in the air at the right time. And yeah, this week seemed to be on a bit of a winner. I don't want to risk jinxing it, but it's it's going good.
No, because you've got to be too conservative, the liberals there, it's like it's the party politics, so we have to satisfy everyone. No. We need to satisfy farmers.
It's different in Queensland because we are a liberal national party.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got Lib Nats. Yeah. The farmers they were just super supportive. They're not asking for anything. They were just like really liking that. And they were also interested, I think, in the crossover in terms of potentially where the industry might be going with regard to adult use. There was definitely prick up your ears on that one.
Farmers grow their own as well.
Yeah. And if you look at our votes as you well know, in regional and rural areas, there's a lot of base there. And in Victoria, we've also got a large Medcan as a big employer as well. So, yeah, I think this is sort of potentially ticking a lot of boxes. And also, what's really important is connecting different stakeholders and bringing them within our general program, which is about destigmatisation and normalisation of cannabis in all of its many splendid forms. Okay. We might just take questions if people have got questions or comments or.
Can I just ask one quick question? Sorry, I jumped in for a bit, so just a quick one. When will we be allowed to drive? I know you were covering this before. at least as a medically prescribed use. When do you optimistically see this or foresee this? At least in Victoria or Queensland or Western Australia or somewhere, when will the crack occur?
Go through.
I think that's a really hard question to answer because I feel like every other state is looking at Victoria because we're doing this trial currently, and we know what the results of that trial will be because it's directly replicated off what the government was involved in a trial over in the Netherlands. It was an on-road trial, and we're hoping the same researchers are also involved in the trial that we're operating here. But the Victorian government has already sponsored a trial overseas. And that outcome was that, yes, you are impaired after taking your medication, but only for a 2 to 4 hour window. And depending on if you take medication orally, if you take it inhalants. We all know that. We all know how much it affects us. That's right, exactly. But what the trial is specified in Victoria is that they put it out to tender. We know that they've got the researchers on board. We expect there'll be an announcement in the budget to say this is how much we're doing. So that's a commitment from them that they are doing it. We've been told that by June, July, it will be on the road with patients, on the track trial, I should say. Not on the road, but off the road, on the road, in a racetrack. But that will only be for about 4 to 6 weeks that they'll actually conduct the physical trial. Then the research will be finalised. We're expecting by the end of the year they will have the outcome of that and be landing on a decision. But they will not commit to us to say if the results are positive or negative, what they'll do next. In saying that, the Minister for Roads, Melissa Horne, has said this is a human rights issue. She said this publicly. She has stated that this is a real concern for her, that patients who have been legal since 2016 in Victoria are still criminalised. And they know it's a major barrier for people accessing their medication. So we'd love to be able to tell you our push will be that the results will be finalised by the end of the year, and we will be holding them to bring in legislation next year to fix the laws.
We'll know where we are by Christmas. I think that's fair to say.
Just a question about the trials themselves. I don't know if you know any specific details, but for each individual person, do they get given a specific dose, or do they get to self-regulate their own dose when they drive?
No, we haven't seen the methodology. I have to say there's been a lot of people volunteered. I'll get a bit of that really good stuff. We think that there will be probably a spread of doses, and so you've got different doses, but of course the other one you've got is different levels of tolerance. So the sampling has to cover both the patient as well as the dosage. And so they'll have a methodology. We haven't seen that yet. It was all commercial in confidence before the tender. But we're certainly going to want to be seeing who's getting the gig and what it's going to look like, before we sort of say, yeah, we're on board.
They've said different reasons to access on that.
Yeah.
Because it would be concerning, when things how it's set up, they could get quite high doses where people would generally self-regulate themselves.
Yeah.
They usually wouldn't drive at that point.
Yeah, that's right.
You can skew data depending on dosages.
Yeah. So we'll just have to look at how rigorous it is, and then we'll take it from there.
I hope they see how they drive before they smoke.
In the Netherlands? Yeah. I don't think there's any.
Well, they do rapidly testing. Like, that's the thing. So, I'm just a bit confused about how. So you say a 2 to 4 hour window before there may be a reduction in impairment.
So just bringing up the 2 to 4 hour impairment window, we know that from other research that we expect the outcome of this research to be exactly the same.
Yeah. So let's just say you get pulled over by the police. Are they looking at doing research into a rapid level testing kit?
From what we know of the testing so far, so they are testing patients on road, taking their medication and recording the outcome of their driving ability, but they have also said that they want to review how they currently test impairment and looking at ways so that, do you walk in a straight line, do you touch your nose with your fingers? And there is no such thing as a saliva testing that will give you a level. It is only blood, but there are new and emerging, urine does it too, yeah. There are emerging technologies that are coming out around rapid eye movement scanning. There is a few different ways that they're looking at it. We haven't found out that detail yet, but they have let us know that they are also reviewing how they test impairment more broadly, which is a real positive because we think, well, they should just be testing impairment rather than presence full stop, including for recreational users. But I think that that's part of the evolution of the changes, but we'll have to wait and see.
Just what I don't think they can test impairment from urine.
They can't test impairment, but they can test THC.
They can test presence.
I don't think Delta 9 comes out in urine. It's mainly...
I think workplace drug test, it's just about presence. They just test for presence.
Satellite that comes out
They test for the 0011.
That's right, but they can't test actual active satellite in urine.
I think the key, the problem is the key takeaway is, and there's lots of research for this, which is there's really no firm correlation between however you test it, how much you've got in your blood, urine, feces, whatever, your hair, and impairment. You know, and you can give exactly the same dose to two people and get totally different results. And you actually saw, I think, from one of the Arkel studies, they had like people who were at 40 nanograms. So that's like, you know, that's gonna slow most people down. And they actually had some in a couple of people that actually improved their driving performance. You know, so it's like you know, that is the problem.
Yeah, our issue is really prosecution.
For the trial, I don't think they want random for the trial. They actually want to know that they've got a sample group of people with experience, body weight, da 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 da.
Equally the practice of testing drugs, the way we're doing it is random testing, whereas in other countries it's only by impairment. That's the crux.
Yeah. Look, I think, you know, in terms of politics being the politics of the possible, I think if we can get an agreement around how RDTs are actually administered, I'm going to take the 4 points. You know, I think we'll say, yeah, that's a good win. And then the whole question of random drug testing is just, that's a whole other battle. You try and conflate the two, you lose both.
Apparently the test that Dr. Brian was talking about in Perth, they had 40 people, aged 18 to 80, all medical users, and they were using their script professionally as their indicator. Whatever they were taking to go to sleep or whatever they're taking during the day, that's what they'd have to fill that drug. And apparently that one, a 2.5 hour check after they've done it, they basically
That's right.
and then 5 hours later they're back to driving choice and making
Yeah, with the impairment testing, how accurate is it for people, say, with disabilities that seem impaired when they may not be?
Yeah, so the thing with Druid is that Druid's not simply a one-off test. Druid, you actually do a benchmark test, and then the more you do it, the more accurate it is. So the idea is your benchmark actually captures your base level unimpaired status, and then when you're roadside tested, you'll get another assessment then. One of the things that they're doing in Victoria at the moment, so you've actually got to store data, that's the key thing, right? You've got to have your benchmark data, and this is yet to be worked through, but one of the hypotheses that's been put forward by the Infrastructure Minister was we're going to electronic driver's licences. So it may be quite possibly we set up a registration scheme. You know, if you're going through a prescriber, you're registered, you can then go online and do your Druid benchmark test, and that will then be attached to your driver's license. So when you get pulled up, the cops can then just go, okay, this is Ben's historic Druid benchmark. This is how Ben performed this afternoon, and fuck, you've been hitting hard this afternoon, brother. No, or he's looking good, you know, whatever. But that's the idea of benchmark and then a current test. But this is all very much in the works. Yeah.
That also leads to a little bit of like the ability to discriminate on people's licences as you know, not your right to not tell everyone about your medications.
In Victoria,
Victoria, you have to declare all your medications now.
Really? So
Yeah.
all data that's stored is identified?
Yeah.
Is that
They ask
right?
me
So
for that
it
before I
already
run
is,
license.
and it will be? Is that what you're saying?
And this is one of the interesting things we do bring up with them is if you have ADHD, for example, you're prescribed potentially an amphetamine-based medication, that's on your license. But if you are pulled over with amphetamine in your system, is that then given a medical exemption? And this is what we want to know, see? So it will all be relative, yeah. Yeah.
And what drugs do they test for?
In Victoria, they currently test for THC, methamphetamine and MDMA. We don't test for cocaine in Victoria. We do test for cocaine in New South Wales.
Why not?
Exactly, because they said it would be off the Richter scale. All right.
Any other questions?
Might be time. Oh, Greg?
I just mentioned a little bit of back room stuff about how you negotiate with the Labor government. We've got a couple of tidbits there, but is it a positive relationship?
Don't know if we can give away all our secrets.
Yeah, well, whatever you can reveal.
I think it depends on who you're working with, and what I think we've had to discover really quickly is that even within the major parties there's factions, and then there's factions within the factions. So you can have guarded support there's a lot of support for what we're trying to achieve on a personal level, and a lot of people do communicate that. But unless you've got certain ministers talking about that in cabinet, then it's not really being progressed at all. The Premier's office also have a team of people that work with us to keep us in the, I guess, in line. They try to keep us abreast of what are all the moving parts. But most certainly, we don't really let them know of any of our decisions until we need to. We like to try and leverage as much as we possibly can. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Can I just congratulate, was it you two that I heard about in Queensland that said, well, if you're going to send your coppers down to arrest 32 peaceful picnickers when you've got violence, women dying every day, we might think very carefully about the stuff you need us to back. Was that you two?
Yeah, I mean, look.
I just want to go, thank you. That's
Thank you.
politics right here. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we said that you can't arrest our people and not expect us to then be like, we're not friends anymore.
Well, especially when there's so much violence going on there.
Exactly.
I was horrified. You know my history.
Yeah.
That's why I can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So congratulations. I just want people to
Yeah.
thank me.
Thank you.
Isaac, you had a question?
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, what can everyone outside of politics do to best help the great work that you guys are doing from the inside?
Oh, I often think one of the really important things is for people just to turn up and for people to engage. So I think legalised cannabis, and it's not just in any one state. You know, as a group, I think we're a bit notorious for just not getting our shit together and turning up to meetings and rallies, not putting in the hard yards in terms of contacting and harassing politicians. And so people have got to get engaged. You know, we can do, we work our asses off trying to do it. But at the end of the day, you've got to scare all the people that are in government that there is an active and concerned community. And if they don't do sensible reform, then we're going to make their lives harder. And I guess the other thing I'd just say about us is that, like, I think we're probably the only party that goes to those cabinet ministers and says, in terms of our careers, make us redundant. You know, make us redundant. It's actually really easy. You've only got to do a couple of pieces of legislation, and we'll get out of your hair. All right, we'll leave you to it. You know, because we are purpose-built. You know, that's what we're here for. But we're only as good as, well, on the one hand, our ability to mess with the government in the parliament, and then on the other hand, it's to provide some point of leadership for a mass movement. And at the moment, the mass movement needs more mass. Yeah.
Rachel, what are you going to say Brent to talk more on? Would you like to talk more on that?
I guess our relationship working with government, I think it's completely shifted since 420, and that's what I was sort of saying is that, you know, we have to work with the government, because if we don't, we won't get any movement on any of our legislation. The opposition, you know, they don't share any of their ideas or want any support, and also, unless you've got the support of government, will anything get through the lower house? So you have to work with them to get anything through and over the line. But we've also said to them, you know, we're happy to be friendly, but if you are going to arrest our people and not see this as an issue, that people are still being criminalised, then we're going to have major issue with that. And that's why we have said we're not necessarily supporting anymore, and we're not just going to, you know, continue to be good friends until you start taking us incredibly seriously.
It's not just 40 people being subject to police attention at 420. It's sort of 9,000 Victorians a year, you know, who are being picked up for personal use or possession. That's the biggie, you know, and so we just say, just stop fucking arresting our people. You know, this is our community. Stop harassing, stop intervening, stop criminalising, stop destroying people's careers. You know, that's what it's about. And yes, we take that personally. Yeah.
Follow up to the 420 negotiations. I'm not saying something that you're talking about there. You did negotiations with the police and the police minister to try and get limit the police overreach. What was your feeling and any feedback from parliamentarians on what was achieved?
I don't think we really got a lot of feedback, because I think one of the things that was really shitful, and I'm not quite sure why it happened, was the fact that there really wasn't a lot of media there. The Herald Sun covered it, but most of the other stations and The Age and The Guardian didn't bother to turn up. So, no, I mean, it's weird, because sometimes we get really good coverage of small things, and this was a big thing, and there was the prospect of mass arrest, which we thought would guarantee it. I'm not quite sure what happened. In terms of the government, look, we had our tanty, we stamped our feet, and we said, you know, we're not going to be friends anymore. That got a level of attention. And I have to say, I think it was one of the most popular things we've done with our own members. It was just, yeah. I think if I could sum up the general membership feedback, it would be, in 2 words, about time. Yeah, so.
It was a remarkable job to bring that from last year's debacle. We had 200 people, police blocking people coming into the park. This year, with these guys' help, the police, we had 500 people arrest pre the event, but at 4 o'clock or 4:20, when David was broken up to light up the joint, the police stood back and didn't arrest anyone. It was a success, I would say, a remarkable success. Negotiation skills.
And to the police credit, and this is what we said, we were actually really embarrassed for them. They did not want to be there. They did not want to be criminalising people. When it was the 420 smoker, they could have just marched on in and grabbed everyone. They stood back and they held back. So, exactly, yeah, they don't want to be doing this. Unfortunately, the police commissioner in Victoria, and that's when we've seen 420, the heavy-handed police response at 420 has been since this commissioner has been in that role. So this particular police commissioner takes real issue, for some unbeknown reason, with cannabis. So we did. In Parliament this week, we really did emphasise this. This is what the commissioner has said, and that we're not going to play ball anymore.
Congratulations. We're actually
yeah, we put in a question on notice, trying to get a breakdown on the costs. Yeah. Yeah, but it doesn't mean that what you get back isn't bullshit or spaghetti. You know, you have to try and they go out of their way to obfuscate it. We did some questions just trying to find out about levels of First Nation people in terms of cannabis arrests, and it took, I think, three lots of questions formally to the minister, and then what it came out was. If you're a First Nations person in Victoria, you're 8 times more likely to be arrested, and you're half as likely to be offered diversion. But it was like pulling teeth to get that data. So you do get the data, but you just got to be tenacious and just keep on chasing it.
I just wanted one quick point when you were relying on police data, about 2013-ish, they brought in a whole new way to put traffic crashes on our system in Queensland, and none of us had any fucking idea how to do it.
Yeah.
So it's incredible. The year later, traffic accidents in Queensland remarkably fell. We didn't have them on the system. So there should just so you know.
We'll take one more question from Lee, our gentleman host. Is one more question? Is there a last question? Oh, look, Lee, they're all...
I'll give you a question.
Okay.
Do you have any influence over the TGA policies?
No, it's federal. Which is why we need to get some senators up, and we will.
We don't have a senate in Queensland.
No, federal senators. So the TGA and APRA, you know, are all federally regulated. The International Convention on Narcotics is federally regulated. We got a whole raft of issues that we need people in Canberra to do because the Greens aren't doing it. You know, they've got their own idea they're going to do this agency thing, but like, if we want to get, say, for example, the down scheduling of cannabis, you know, hey, let's maybe suggest it's not the same as heroin, then that requires intervention at a federal level. And that's what we'd like to see, some really practical stuff.
There's a form for rescheduling.
There's a form?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, you just got to find the right form.
TGA Form 20, it's worth having a look at.
Okay.
And reschedule.
If only I knew we had to fill out the form and it'd be all over. All right. We might call it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, David and Rachel. Appreciate it.
Very ugly form, that one.